and welcome once again to the Drop-In. I am Garold, Vallie, and you know, if you've been here, I bring you some of the most amazing guests, some of the truly phenomenal guests, and we talk about their story, how they got to where they got to. And today's guest, I'm so excited because in my old studio, he was my very first guest. And it was one of my first times ever being on video, gave me some great pointers. He's been a mentor of mine. And so when Kurt agreed to come on in our new location here at the Better Rate Mortgage Studios, I was so stoked, so excited. He probably doesn't even, may not even remember the conversation, but it helped me so much as a person to grow. And we're going to get into that a little bit. So I'm not going to run my mouth too much because I want you guys to get to know my friend, KurtADavid. Kurt, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Yeah, it's an honor to be here. It's exciting to see what you're doing here and how you continue to grow and progress and build as well.
Well, I think about the first time we met. You were signing your book at the Gibraltar Trade Center.
Yes, yeah,
I stopped to shoot the breeze a little bit. Do you remember that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was. In fact, it's kind of sad it's closed up now, that place. But it was a great conversation, listening to what you were looking to do and where you were at and your journey at that point, and talking about what I'm doing. And geez, that was probably over 10 years ago now.
At least.
Yeah.
At least. And then when I started with NRM, you were my first choice. You know, when I started, because the podcast started from the couch, we moved it to video, and I'm like, I got to get Kurt in here. It'd be so cool. Yeah. And we had a great time doing that as well.
Absolutely. It's great to see your growth as well. And it started with this book, right? It started with a book signing, and it's neat to see how doors open, right? You know, and I believe God opens the doors he wants us to walk through. And so meeting each other and then progressing, and we've been friends ever since, and watching what you're doing, and continuing to, continue to do what we're doing. And so that's the exciting part.
Yes, it is very exciting. And I'm excited to have you guys here. You know, I don't take your time lightly. You're going to spend an hour with us, hopefully get up energized, excited. I talk a lot about the goosebumps. They're already here. I get goosebumps all the time, and hopefully you do too, as you sit with us and spend an hour on the Drop-In. And with that, I want to start with From Glory Days, the book. How did you get the idea to become an author, to write the book, to do what you've done with that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I mean, first of all, it starts with who I am, right? And I can't talk about what I do without talking about who I am. I was raised, there were 6 of us in my family. All 6 of us were on athletic scholarship, and 2 of us played professionally. So imagine that household growing up. Very competitive, very sports-minded. I don't know how my parents clothed and fed us, to swear to God. And so moving forward from that moment, I was one of the 2 children that played professionally. And as I learned, and everybody knows, 100% of professional athletes ultimately lose their job. Undeniable fact. At some point, you're done pro, right? You understand as well, right? Mm-hmm. That professional career is over at some point. And so when I had my journey out of pro sports, I had my own challenges and issues, and took a year off just to figure things out. Moved forward from that moment. And years later, I had the idea. I said, boy, it would be neat to sit down with other former pro athletes and hear about their story, and more importantly, how they recreated their successes. And that's what spawned the idea for the book. So I sat down with 20 former, and since being here in Detroit, I sat down with 20 former Detroit Pistons, Tigers, Red Wings, and Lions, and interviewed them about their glory days, but also talked about that transition out of pro sports and then how they recreated their success, and that spawned the book. The book came out, did a ton of signings. You know, that's how you and I met. I think I did over 60 signings in the first 3 months. It was, 2, 3 in a weekend sometimes. Anyway, the book was a hit. At that time, my agent and I were like, boy, this is bigger than the book. Let's do a TV show based on the book. So that's where the TV show concept came from. Started with 9 interviews, first season, then up to 13, and 13 and 13. We've done 4 seasons of the show. We won an Emmy in season 4 with my interview with Rocky Blyer out of Pittsburgh. And so that was a great accomplishment, sitting down with Rocky, hearing his story, and we can talk about that later as well. But that's the progression of what happened here. I have a counseling background, a master's in counseling, and so part of my interest in sports was personal, right, from my own experience. Part of it was professional, to hear about how did you guys handle this? What do you took a 95% pay cut, right? Divorces, bankruptcy, all the things that come with this transition out of pro sports. What did you do to find success again? How did you recreate your purpose, right? And so that became my passion. And what's neat is that it's started off with a book. And first of all, let me say this. I remember vividly, 5th grade, hating reading, hating writing. I wanted nothing to do with it. You understand, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, man, this, I really don't want to do this, right? But fortunately, I had great teachers teachers that taught me, teachers that stayed with me and says, no, this is an important life lesson. And thank God I listened and learned some things, because years later, when it was time to write a book, it was like, oh, well, I got a little bit of skill to be able to do this, right? And so lesson learned, right, as a result. But that said, you never know. You never know in life. I mean, that moment of, okay, I'm still going to learn how to read and write, and obviously it paid off, right, many, many years later. And now it's turned into a brand, right? Not just the From Glory Days brand, but my own personal brand as well, speaking and doing workshops. And I'm very fortunate, very fortunate.
Well, and it's so cool to hear the progression. And I remember it might have been season 1, maybe season 2 of the TV show. I came down and was in the audience because you had Greg Stephan on the show.
Yes.
And when I was, coming up as a goaltender, Greg Stephan was the man. And it was so cool to be in there, small audience, and be with just legends of the game. Such a great environment for the audience to be a part of that.
Yeah, it was really, that was a fun part of it, was the interactive audience. And, we always had Q&A at the end of the interview, so an audience member could ask somebody a question. And I miss those days of that audience. And we progressed. Obviously, the show's progressed, and it's just a matter of do we need to go back to our roots again and have the audience again? Because I really enjoyed that part of it. It was fun between takes, just kind of ribbing and having fun with the people in the audience. And the athletes loved it too, because they like the interaction, off camera as well. And so...
Yeah, and you speak on stages. I speak on stages. That's one thing we've missed over the last few years.
Oh, huge.
Having to converse with everybody through social media or through Zoom or through whatever other.
Not the same.
It just isn't.
Yeah.
And I try as hard as I could. I take a shower, do my whole routine up to getting in front of there. Is it. But that crowd interaction is so special.
Nothing replaces it. Well, I'm 6'9" tall, so that in person really has an impact, right? And literally, I went from over 100, I think it was 140 in-person speaking gigs in 2019 to 7 in-person in 2020 and 3 in-person in 2021. So that's been a huge transition. Now, the good news is I'm starting to see that crack open again. It's like, okay, it looks like things are going to happen, but so that's been a challenge. But again, it kind of goes back to, well, how do you handle that? What do you do during adversity? What do you do during change? And that's one of the things I speak on. And so, I have to live and practice what I preach, so to speak.
Yep. One of my favorite quotes, and I don't know the actual author, but it's never a lack of resources. It's usually a lack of resourcefulness. And I think in this time, definitely being resourceful is so important.
Yeah. And that's what's so good about what you're doing, is it helps provide people with tools.
Yeah.
Different people you're speaking to, different tools, different ideas, your own journey, other people's journeys.
It works out pretty good, I think, for all involved. I'm glad to have you in studio. I'm glad to have you guys spending this time with us, and hopefully you're taking some notes as we move along. Get something that gets you stoked, get you fired up to get out of bed in the morning. That's ultimately the goal of the drop-in. So with that, I want to ask, you've had some incredible guests over the years, on the seasons of From Glory Days. Is there any one, I know you brought up Rocky, but is there one that really stands out?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. And the hard part is I've done 50 TV interviews, and each one of them have their own unique stories, right? Each athlete has their own, I might have the same line of questioning for each athlete, but they have their own unique story based on it. We know Darren McCarty. Darren is somebody that's well known around this studio here. And Darren was one of those guys I watched from a distance for a while, because I said, well, our goal is to have somebody that went from here to here and found success again. So we were kind of waiting. And having Darren on the show, he talks about very candidly about his 4 Stanley Cups. What an accomplishment. Well, people would love to have 1 Stanley Cup, right? He's got 4 of them. He talked about his very public and very horrific transition out of pro sports, right? Talked about all the problems and all the challenges that he had. But then he went on to talk about, this is what I needed to do to change the direction of where I was heading in my life. And so sharing that was very powerful, to say, these are the things that I did that helped me get into a better place. And so sharing that was talking about from here to here to how do I get back up here again, which is very powerful. Probably the single most powerful story of all the interviews I've done was a guy that was the number 2 draft pick in the NHL. He wasn't number 1. He was the 2nd pick by the LA Kings. He came out of Ottawa, Canada. His name was Doug Smith. And Doug Smith was 19 years old, went from Ottawa, Canada to Los Angeles. Imagine that, from little Ottawa to all of a sudden. He said, I was 19 years old, money in my pocket, driving a Porsche, condo on the beach. He said it was a free fall.
In
right?
the biggest market,
Correct.
Arguably the biggest market in the United States.
Absolutely. Pro sports, media. Anyway, so he's there. So 19, he said it was just a free fall. All this, he's just like, man, just money, everything. At 28 years old, during a professional hockey game, he went headfirst into the boards, went from being a professional hockey player to quadriplegic, like that, snapped his neck. And Doug talked about how obviously it just, how unbelievably he couldn't comprehend what was going on, right? I mean, you go from being a pro athlete to nothing from the neck on down. Talked about being so despondent, upset, just the problems. And he said, I couldn't even kill myself. I couldn't even take my own life because of the fact that I had nothing from the neck on down. Anyway, his wife, recognizing his mental state, said, listen, I can't imagine what you're experiencing, but I love you. You have 2 beautiful daughters that love you. You have a lot to live for. And Doug talked about during the interview, that was his seminal moment of shift of his attitude. And talked about that at that point on, he started looking at, okay, what's going on with my body? What's going on with me? And he and his wife started doing more and more research about his injury. The good news is they discovered his spinal cord was still intact, that the paralysis came as a result of the trauma of the shattering of the vertebrae. I think it was over 200 pieces that his vertebrae shattered. And as a result, that his spinal cord was still intact. And so over the course of about 8 years after that, through different therapies, different type of exercises, he's now walking again. And he's a motivational speaker and author throughout Canada. And so what a powerful story, right? We've had him on the show 2 seasons. I was like, well, you got to tell this story again, right? This is so powerful. But, each athlete, I mean, it's fun. Here in Detroit, I mean, we've had a lot of great athletes. Lem Barney, who's a Hall of Fame Detroit Lion, talked about how he was so passionate about football. It took him 18 years. It took him 18 years to stop having dreams about football, often tackling and elbowing his wife. He said, wake up, and it's like, wife's like, hey, slow down, And so, but, one story after another, so many stories. Rocky Blyer, we won the Emmy Award with Rocky Blyer. And I know you wanted me to narrow it down to one. I just can't, right?
Well, and I have to comment about Doug because you connected us. We talked a few times. And for you guys, I called him. They were flooding. I think he's in
Ottawa River.
Yep, It was flooding, and he answers the phone while he's filling sandbags. This is the guy that was paralyzed, and he's such a cool dude. But he's like, hey,
what a story.
Can I give you a call back a little later? I'm filling some sandbags right now. I'll talk to you in a little bit. But what an amazing story.
Yeah, it just tells you what kind of guy he is, too, that he knew that when I connected, it's like, oh, yeah, this is a good introduction, and so that's good. But, yeah, and Rocky was a national champion at Notre Dame in football. Drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, played a season with the Steelers, got drafted into the Army, literally got an Army draft, went to Vietnam, so it was during that era. So he went from the fields of the NFL to the fields of Vietnam, literally. He said, you go from trying to be the best athlete to my number one goal is survival, literally. Mm-hmm. Shot in one leg, hand grenade in the other leg, comes back to Japan where the doctors are like, oh, you'll be okay, you're going to walk again. He's like, walk, I want to play football. They're like, oh, you'll never play football again. Came back and won 4 Super Bowls after that, right? I mean, so those are the stories that we love to promote and tell, and
yes,
and so and he's having great success. He went from the 4 Super Bowls, that transition out of pro sports, created some companies. He does a lot of speaking as well, motivational speaking, and so it's neat to see these stories, right? I mean, I could tell you story after story of these guys that go through here to here, but also then what did they do to get back up again? Mm-hmm. Fall down 7, get up 8. Right?
Yep.
And these are the stories that we like to tell and let people know about.
Yeah, definitely. And I totally agree with you. If somebody said, who's your best guest you ever interviewed? I don't think I could pick one because each one hits me a little different. And I get something out of the time we get to spend together.
Absolutely. And the audience as well. Somebody else might have something else that resonates with them. Like, oh, yeah, you had that guest on, and that really hit home with me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you just never know. You really never know. But it's awesome that we have this opportunity to bring this kind of content to you guys with so much going on that isn't so positive, to bring you a little bit of an hour of positivity. And that's what we're doing here with KurtADavid. The guest thing is always a question. It's always a question. I like to see, what inspires you. And obviously guests have. Are you still creating... you said you have 4 seasons and you'd like to get back to it. Any chance of more TV coming?
We had a little hiccup, something called a global pandemic. We had a lot of momentum. Our goal was after season 4 and winning Emmy, we said, well, let's just take this thing national, right? Let's keep the momentum that we have going and let's take it national. So we positioned some things to do that. We lined up with an agency out of LA who was going to start shopping the show to bigger networks. And all of a sudden, everybody went on furlough. And so we lost a lot of momentum. We were looking at actually a national name host as a result of saying, okay, well, KurtADavid's good, but let's get a national name in there. Worked out contracts and agreements with that. But we just haven't got the momentum back. So we're literally, and this is the first you're hearing it, folks. This is not public until now, that we're going to look at going back to a great local show. I'm going to host it. We're going to keep it going. And so we're going to revitalize it that way. So we took a shot at the national, but unfortunately, because of the timing and everything happening, we're going to come back to our roots again.
Yeah, that's cool. Like I said, the content was wonderful. And especially with what you're doing here in the Metro Detroit area, yes. People here are so passionate about their sports. Yeah. And so to be able to learn or to humanize some of those people that maybe we only grew up with on TV, to read something or see them.
As an example, you mentioned that.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. I didn't know he was a golf pro and those kinds of things.
Won a Stanley Cup with Carolina as a coach over there. And so he had to leave the Red Wings, unfortunately. It's kind of like with the Detroit Lions. A lot of people have to leave in order to win a Super Bowl, but we won't talk about that today. Right?
No, they got some good things in return, but they didn't get a Super Bowl, you know. But in 2018, we're going to move a little quickly because we only spent an hour with you guys, but I wanted to talk about Purpose Point a little bit. And in 2018, you co-founded Purpose Point. Yes. Can you tell us about that? What that is, what your goals are, where you're going?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It was so exciting, and I believe the doors get open and things happen, and I stopped being surprised, right? I really, things have happened in my life that I'm very grateful for. And I also believe that there's not by chance when things happen. And so I had a chance to meet somebody by the name of David Silvano, and Dave and I were in meetings together. It's called C12. It's a Christian CEO and business owner group. It's something national, and they had a local chapter, and he and I were there. And we got talking afterwards about the speaking business, and he's like, boy, wouldn't it be great if we could create something that would really resonate with speaking, with coaching, with some of these other aspects. And what we didn't plan on was things shifting so quickly. So we had a summit called the Purpose Summit. And our goal with the Purpose Summit, the first one, was to have people attend, organizations, individuals, that they walked away, to use your phrase, stoked, like, oh my goodness, I am realizing my purpose, whether it be professionally, personally, whatever it is, in identifying that and then just lighting them up. I just see them light up, right? We had so many people that afterwards were like, oh, I just needed this. This is what I needed. 2020 happened. We had to cancel the Purpose Summit, and we had one in 2021, which turned out well. And now we're going to the Purpose Summit at the University of Notre Dame in 2022 in May, coming up here, as a matter of fact. In fact, it would be a great opportunity for individuals and organizations to say, wow, this is something. It's a leadership development group. And like I tell people, a leadership development doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be a CEO of a company, right? I could be a leader in my family, right? How do I learn leadership skills that apply to my personal life? How do I learn leadership skills that apply to my professional life? And so our target is to have people there and hear these different speakers from all over, everybody from the CEO of WD-40, right? I mean, who doesn't know what WD-40 is, right? Lippert Industries is one of our co-sponsors. They are I think, $4 or $5 billion industry that's in the RV market, right? And they're based out of South Bend, and that's one of the reasons why we're going to that area. But, hear these national leaders talk about, this is what I do as a leader. This is my purpose. This is how I help my individuals and my organization have purpose. And just refocusing. I mean, purpose is a word that I guess a lot of people are using these days. We've heard more and more over the last few years. I think there's more awareness right now. But our goal is to help each individual, whether it be personally or professionally, identify and recognize, boy, this is the why. I off camera talked about the why and identifying their why, and why, that's so important, because when things do get tough, if that's not there, it's going to be a rocky road, right? But if I have my why, if I know my purpose and things do get tough, like a great example, these last 2 years, I mentioned how many speaking gigs I went from to basically zero, right, almost. Well, I still had my why, which was helping people, serving people, and how do I continue to do that? Okay, well, I can still continue to do that in different manners, right? Whether it be on a Zoom or in other matters, a phone call. And so that was still maintained. The vehicle that I did to deliver it had to change temporarily, right? But the why was still there. The purpose was still there, if that makes sense.
Oh, it totally makes
And
sense.
everybody, we're created for a purpose. Everybody has a very, to use the word from The Jerk, special purpose, right? Not that special purpose from Steve Martin from The Jerk, for those of you that are Steve Martin fans and The Jerk fans. But seriously, though, we all have a special purpose. We're all created for a purpose. And the best day of somebody's life isn't the day they're born, it's the day they identify their purpose.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And, over the last 2 years, figuring out rethinking my why and resourcefulness and how can I use this time.
Yeah.
And I mentioned off camera, I'm just getting ready to launch my next book in about a month.
It's huge.
And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that got done over this time.
Yeah.
Being here in this studio, continuing to create content, figuring out new avenues to inspire people.
Mm-hmm.
Another way to get people excited to get off the couch, to get out of bed in the morning and be excited about it. And you just, I think, hit the nail on the head. When you start to think of your personal why, not only the corporate why or anything, your personal why, and you ask yourself those questions, that's a game changer in everyday life.
Yeah, yeah, and you bring up a good point, the corporate why. What we see, and Davin's really good, the founder of our company is really good. He's our CEO as well. I'm the chairman of the company, so I've kind of changed my roles along the way, but Davin is really good, and he explained it this way, which I think is great. He says, when a company starts, they have a purpose. They have a specific purpose of why they started, whether they're inventing sprockets or rockets or whatever it is they're inventing. They have a specific purpose. As they continue to scale and grow, they have to add more people. As they continue to add more people, they have to add more processes. As they continue to add more processes, now they have to start really focusing on bottom line and dollars and profits. And they've kind of lost track of that purpose that is supposed to permeate throughout all that. They've lost and become segmented where, we added people, then we had to add processes, and now we're really focused on our profits. And they've lost touch with that purpose. It doesn't permeate throughout all those layers anymore. And so our goal is to help organizations and individuals permeate that purpose throughout all those layers. You still have to be profitable and sustainable. You can't, there's no mission without money, right? You have to have that. So profit is still, and productivity is still part of it, but in the process are still there. But how do you permeate that purpose so that people understand this is why I'm going to work? A great example of that is there's a company, I can't think of the name of the company, they make specific hospital beds, right? So you have these manufacturer workers that are putting screws in beds. And once they identified with the fact that this screw I'm putting in could save a life, right? They connected that dot and that purpose of the original company. It was like, what I'm doing is important. And so identifying that and realizing that is so important. A great example is your life, right? You've had a journey. You've had an absolute journey. And through that journey, there's a purpose for that journey because it set you up to help others in a lot of different ways that I can't help because you've had a specific journey. For one, you wouldn't want to see me on a skateboard, right? For two, you wouldn't see me long on a skateboard because I'd be on the concrete somewhere, right? But you understand what I mean by that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the greatest examples of getting away from your purpose, and everybody knows Walmart. And when Sam Walton, I think it was 2008, when he decided he couldn't embody his bone bag anymore and be on this planet, the company really shifted and has, prior to that, it was employee driven. He had a whole different purpose for the company, and they're trying to get back to that. But that, I think, is a wonderful example of
when they lost their purpose. Yeah, I mean, here's a guy that's a multi-billionaire driving a truck with dog hair all over in it, and people that get in a suit that sit down in his truck, he's like, so what? It's my truck. These are my dogs, right? What's the big deal? Right?
Yep.
And so, but he had that grounded idea and purpose of what he was trying to do.
Yeah. It was when I found that out, I'm like, I like that. I like that a lot. And they did talk about the document I was reading about. He'd drive a beater to work. He's like, I'm just a normal dude, man.
Right. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. I thought that was great. But with Purpose Point and everything you're doing right now, I can't think of a better time for that messaging. For everything we've discussed over the last few minutes, just the whys and developing a purpose, especially with, people, we've been on lockdown. We've had to do this and do that. And then the essential workers have had to work nonstop. And I brought up burnout off camera. I can't think of a better time for people to visit Notre Dame this year and be at the Purpose Summit.
Well, it's really, I think that you identify right now, because of what we've gone through, you identify the fact that, boy, there's a problem, right? And the problem with me has become manifested because of the fact that people have had a lot of time to just kind of sit and think, right? Before, we're constantly moving. And that could be a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing because a lot of times we don't realize and we don't think about things. And now it's caused people to think of, why am I doing this? Why do I go to work at this time and hate my job? And why? I mean, that's why we've seen such an exodus. And I can't remember the stats. I think it's ungodly amount. I don't know if it's in the 60s or 80% exactly, but a large number of people are leaving their jobs because of the fact that this is not what I want to do. I had an awakening, so to speak, a great awakening, and whatever you want to call it, a great reset, great resignation, great awakening. That's what we're seeing. I mean, it's just, you can't go anywhere around here without seeing help wanted signs, right? And there's a specific purpose for that. People, I think, are, well, I really want to do this, right? My wife and I have a 19-year-old daughter that I love to death, but she point blank said, I just expect things to be handed to me now. And it's like, well, that's a problem. That's definitely a problem because that's not the way you've been handed your life, and that's not the real world. But a lot of people don't want to go work at Arby's, go work McDonald's for $15 an hour, which is ungodly, right? In my opinion, it's like, wow, how many years it took me to get $15 an hour before that happened. But anyway, I think what's happening is we're seeing awakening right now of people saying, why am I doing this? What am I doing, and why am I doing this? Whether it be a relationship, whether it be a family, whether it be a work. I think people have had time to think, which is good, but also can be dangerous.
Yeah.
It can be dangerous if not handled well of what it is that they're thinking about, right?
Yep. And according to Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I'm a student of, by the time people are 35 years old, 85% of their days are on autopilot.
Yeah.
So I calculated the hours when I was writing, and it's like, the majority of your day, you're doing the things you're doing just because you did that thing yesterday. Oh. And when you get to your why, even on the mundane things,
Yeah.
why am I wearing, blue Dickies?
Yeah.
I'm like, because I like and they're functional. I can come up with a bunch of whys why I would still wear them, but a lot of people would be like, because that's what I did yesterday. Is
You
normally.
know what? That's a great point because I've heard a speaker, his name Orrin Woodward, out of New York. He's a New York Times bestselling author. Anyway, he talked about how people literally could do something for 30 years and they're not growing because they're just doing the same thing over and over again. Mm-hmm. Where somebody in 1 or 2 years can pass up that person in 30 years because they're looking to grow. They're active. They know their why. They're going into it with the idea that, boy, this is my purpose and this is how I'm going to continue to grow my purpose, right? Where other people are just doing the same thing for 30 years and not growing. It's just somebody who in 2 years can go way past them for the same type of position, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And I think when you are passionate about anything, and you're a great example of this, when you're passionate about what you're doing, writing a book, telling these stories, look at the doors that open. Like I highly doubt that 10 years ago you could have imagined where you were going to be at today.
I feel so blessed. I really do. I think that if I look at, this book's changed my life. The Emmy Award has changed my life in a positive way, and I'm very grateful for it. And often, it took a while for my wife to realize what was going on. She's like, so what are you doing here? What's this all about? I'm like, just trust me, honey. It's going to work out. And it is. And I love speaking now and doing workshops because my passion is helping individuals and organizations face change like a champion, as I call it. And so understanding the commonalities of success for people and organizations that have found success, these are the 5 commonalities in what they do in order to accelerate through change. And so that's one of the things that I speak on. And I was just down in Arizona recently for the Siemens Corporation and spent a week down there with 700 different employees talking about that and all the changes they're going through. And it's great. And it's not about, it's all about me. It's about, wow, I can help people navigate this and it helps them. And the affirmation for me is simply understanding that I helped them, right? It's not about, oh, look at me. It's like, wow, that's great. I got a chance to help you.
Yeah. How may I serve? Yeah. How may I serve is a great question.
Absolutely.
Ask it when you get out of bed in the morning. It's a wonderful question. Just how may I serve? Whatever you believe in. It's a great question.
So you're going to get me going right now because I have a counseling background, a master's in counseling. And I really believe that some of the problem, not all of it, but some of the problem with the depression and anxiety that we're seeing so much that's rampant right now, especially these last couple of years, I'm not going to deny the fact that there's chemical or biological reasons for that. There is. But also I see when people are so inwardly focused, they that's all they think about is themselves and their problems and everything going on. Where the more outwardly focused you can become, the more you forget about your own problems. I think that's one of the things that really has helped me throughout my life is, there's been challenges and roadblocks and things that I've had in my life, but by continue to be outward focused versus inward focused, I think if I was inward focused about all the things that I've had to experience in a challenging way, I'd be a basket case, right? But I continue my focus outwardly to say, who can I serve? How can I serve them? What do I need to do to equip myself to serve them, right? That's the focus on me, is what can I do to get better? And then focus on how do I serve people as a result. But I think the people that can do that can help from an emotional state, right? Because I have lots of reasons to be depressed. I do. I mean, I've had things, and we all do. I've had things that have happened in our life. But by staying outwardly focused and focus on serving others, I think that really helps, in my opinion. I think we're designed that way as well.
And I completely agree with you. Being in recovery, 5 years sober,
Yeah,
one of the
congratulations.
biggest things, thank you. One of the biggest things in no matter what recovery program you're part of, AA, whatever, it's helping somebody else. Get outside of yourself,
Yeah.
help somebody else. And I think that journey for me helped me do that even more. It helped to
Look what you're doing
exacerbate
today.
that.
You're helping somebody else, right? And hopefully somebody hears this and it resonates, and through your story or my story, and that's where the power is.
Yeah, and it's exciting and fun, and still does, it gets my adrenaline going.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I started doing this is because I knew I couldn't be high energy athlete all the time. And this
The glory days, yeah.
yeah, exactly, from glory days. But I think it's even bigger than that,
Yeah.
with what you're doing, just helping so many people.
Well, here's what I've learned. I've learned that, titles are great, making money is great, right? Those things are great. But to me, the real value of life is the ability to change a life.
Yes.
Right. That's the value. That for me, it's like, that's what wakes me up. That's what takes me away from my family, is the value of being able to positively change a life. Right. Those other things are great. Money's great. Title's great. But that ability to positively change somebody's life is powerful.
Definitely. And speaking of that, we talked about the Purpose Summit coming up in
Yes.
Notre Dame. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the guests that are going to be
absolutely.
there?
Yeah, so we're going to have the CEO of WD-40, Lippert, Jason Lippert, the family name of the company. I think it's a $4 or $5 billion company. A lot of different guests that have written books about purpose, also people that are very much aligned with what we align with of how do we help people, how do we serve people. We have 18 different speakers. It's May 17th through the 19th down at University of Notre Dame. If you want, it's thepurposesummit.com, right? That's the website, thepurposesummit.com. Or you can go to my website, KurtADavid.com, and there'll be links to that as well.
And you can get to it through Purpose Point as well.
Correct, yeah, purposepoint.com. So there's lots of different avenues to get to it to find out more information. And I just, I encourage people, if you feel so moved, take a look at it. If you feel like something that could help you, absolutely, right? I mean, our goal is not to sell people. Our goal is to help people. And so, we want to help people and want people to be there, obviously, because we can't do this unless people are there. But we also understand that, hey, when you're ready, come on over.
Well, and you just remind me, because I love quotes. I read a ton. And again, Dr. Dyer says, love what you're doing and sell that love.
Yeah.
I don't want to sell a product.
Right.
I just want, and I'm not even selling anything. I just
Yeah.
want you guys to feel the stoke, feel the passion right through that lens, and go, I want some of that,
Yeah.
whatever those guys are on.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to read people, and it's like, whoa, okay, I'm going to take it down a couple notches. But it's love and an experience, right? I mean, this is a belief that I've heard, and I believe it 100%. Everybody deserves love and respect. Everybody. I believe that everybody on this planet deserves love and respect. But not everybody deserves my trust. You have to earn my trust. And so I believe as people, we all should love and respect, but doesn't necessarily mean I have to trust somebody, right? You have to earn that trust. And it could be, character or whatever you want to call it as part of that trust. In other words, as people trust me, my character improves because I'm doing things that I say I'm going to do. And so, but again, it goes back to everybody deserves love and respect, but you have to earn my trust. And I think if everybody approached life that way, I think we'd all be eager to try, okay, boy, what can I do to earn your trust, right? Mm-hmm. I appreciate your love and respect. What can I do to earn your trust now? And one of the best ways, in fact, this is a little tidbit here from KurtADavid.com. If you want to know how to earn people's trust, one of the easiest and best ways to do that is to serve them. To serve them. Because you serve other people, they start trusting you and realize, boy, this person, he or she cares for me. And that's how you build that trust. So it's one of the easiest ways to build trust is serve others.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Simple.
And let's, since we're talking about KurtADavid.com and whatever, or whatnot, let's talk about the 5 rules.
Yeah.
Because as I kept doing my research for the show,
Yeah.
I'm like, I like this. 5 rules. 5 is easy to remember. You can
And
easily
rules,
write
yeah,
down.
we all have rules of life, sports rules, everything. And so what it is, what you're describing is through my research with former professional athletes working with highly successful organizations, as I studied them and saw the transitions they were going through and then studied the successes that they had, I realized there was a commonality, right? There was like, oh, this is the pattern. This is the pattern that people are doing in order, whether they're going through change or transition or adversity. These are the 5 things they're doing. And so being the simple mind, I thought, okay, how do I remember these 5? So I created an acronym, RULES, RULES. Each letter stands for something. Each letter means something. And so the R stands for refocus. And this is going to be a crib note version, right? I typically could speak anywhere from 90 minutes to 3 hours on this topic, right? And so this is going to be a crib note version. But the R stands for refocus. What I've discovered is that individuals or organizations that are going through a change had to refocus. And the best way to refocus is evaluate current goals and establish new goals. A great example of that is, I use this story when I speak, on January 16th, 1920, right? None of us, you and I weren't around, but on January 16th, 1920, something epic happened in America that was called Prohibition. And at that time, there was 1,273 breweries in America that were running and brewing beer. Well, on January 16th, 1920, all of a sudden, they couldn't do it anymore. That the U.S. government said, no legal sale of beer or production of beer, right? Imagine if you had a company, if you were one of those 1,273 breweries that were told, you can't do this anymore. We know what happened to the 80% that closed, but 244 of those companies remained open. And so my research was like, well, we know what happened to 80%. They were told they couldn't do this, and so they just stopped doing it. But what did those 244 do that remained open? Mm-hmm. Well, one of them was run by a couple German immigrants that decided they weren't going to take this prohibition lying down, and they had to refocus. They literally went from brewing beer to malt extract, ginger ale. They even started making car and auto parts during that time. And as a result, Anheuser-Busch had to refocus. They reestablished their goals during that change, and they survived Prohibition to the point that when beer did come back, they sold for, what was it, $52 billion or something not too long ago to a company. And so that's just one example. I mean, I can give you examples of athletes and other organizations of how they refocused, but that's the first step. It's the first step, setting goals. You know, if I'm going through a change or a challenge, what are my current goals? And every goal has to be measurable too. And that's one of the things I always say is if you set a goal, it's got to be measurable. You know, you can talk about SMART goals or different things as well, but that's the first letter, R, refocus. And again, we could go deeper, much deeper into it.
Well, and I'll say you've lived that.
You've
lived
I've had
that
lots
from
of
being
refocus.
Professional athlete to realizing this to this to
Yes.
this. You've lived it. You've lived that.
Absolutely. So it's time tested, right? I see it with organizations, not just my own personal life, but a lot of other highly successful people and organizations as well. But so that's the R. The U stands for using network. What I discovered is that people going through a change and transition in organizations all have a vast network of people, right? They have their refocus, they have their new goals, and they look at that network to say, well, who can help me accomplish this? And I always want to clarify, I'm not talking about using and abusing people. I'm talking about creating win-win. I'll use the Anheuser-Busch example again. During that transition that they were going through with Prohibition, they had a vast network of people around them already for distribution of their beer, right? I mean, they had a vast network already in place. Well, now all of a sudden it's like, hey, guess what? We're not distributing or we're not selling beer anymore or making beer anymore, but we have this malt extract, we have ginger ale, we have car and auto parts. Who can we tap to in our network to, because all of a sudden all those beer distributors too had to readjust. And so now all of a sudden I have a new product that I could distribute, right? So they use their network to help with their refocus to go into through that change. And that's what helped them survive as a result. And we can go deeper into that. There's athletes that have tapped into their networks when they were done playing pro sports. One example is a gentleman who played for the Red Wings. When he got out, he was a financial advisor, and he tapped immediately into his vast network, said, hey, guess what? I'm no longer playing pro sports, but I'm doing this. Help rocket his business as a result, finding win-win relationships within that network. So that's what the U stands for. The next letter, L, let go, is bar none, no doubt, without a question, the most difficult for pro athletes. letting go, right?
And I
Letting
think
go.
that's why so many end up, coaching or doing this or staying.
Or trying to still play for another 3 years when they should have quit 3 years earlier,
True,
right? And spending all this money that they didn't have trying to keep playing. But yeah, it's and part of it is, and you understand this, it's in the marrow of our bones. Fall down 7, get up 8, right? You just keep going and going. And so knowing when to let go is very difficult for a pro athlete. But it's also very difficult for organizations, right? Sometimes there's organizations that they need to let go of things in order to move forward through change. A great example of that, I was talking to a Ford exec many years ago, and I asked him, I said, how did Ford Motor Company survive this downturn we had back in 2008, right? Everybody else was taking government money. The other auto industries were taking government money and loans, and Ford didn't, and they got through that, and
they were one of the only big three. I think they were the only
They were
one.
the only big three, absolutely. And then, started turning profits as a result, within years after that. This Ford executive said, yeah, we did many things to get through that downturn, but one of the things we did is we realized that we had to let go of something. And I said, oh, really? What was it? He said, well, we were spending a lot of money on a mantra that we were promoting, quality is job one, right? Remember those Ford Motor Company ads and everywhere, quality is job one. He said, we had to let go of that because we realized we weren't doing it. We weren't creating quality. He said, we had to come to grips with that and let that go in order to move forward. And so that was one of the things they had to let go of in order to move forward again and have success, which they did. And then they started creating quality product again, and it was like, whoa, okay, now the market is coming back, and here we are. And so that's just one example. I could tell you about athletes that have had to let go, and everybody's got their own timetable for letting go, right? I had a gentleman that called me out of Houston, Texas, and he says, hey, I heard you're the guy that worked with transition and athletes. I said, yeah, tell me more. He says, well, I just won a medal in the Olympics. I said, okay, you have my attention, right? And so he went on to explain that he wasn't sure if he wanted to continue in the Olympics, commit another 4 years. So he and I started working through the rules, right? The RUL. We got to the L, and he's like, well, I don't know if I want to let go. I don't know if I want to commit another 4 years or not. And literally, he took about 6 months of our conversation, regular conversation, before he finally realized, yeah, I think it's time. I'm going to let go. I'm not going to commit another 4 years. It catapulted him then into the next phase of his life as an actor and doing all these things he's having great success with now. But it took him that long before he was able to let it go. To the contrary, I got a phone call from an agent here in Birmingham, as a matter of fact, that said, hey, I got a baseball player that just got released in spring training from the Tigers. Can you sit down with him? Sat down and started working through the rules with him. Within a week, he's like, I'm done. I'm no longer a pro athlete. I'm moving on. He let it go right away, right? And so everybody's different of their letting go. And so, but it is an integral part of moving forward is letting go. And sometimes we have to let go of the successes, not just the failures, right? We have to let go of the negative thoughts, but also the successes. I'm going to be long-winded on this, but it's a very important topic. I love history, in case you didn't notice. But in the Roman Empire, when the Roman generals came home from their conquering lands, they had these things called campaigns. It was equivalent to a Super Bowl parade today. When a team comes back with their Super Bowl parade and all the accolades, well, this is what was happening in Rome when the generals would come home.
I can envision it.
Yeah.
Like I see it.
Yeah,
like,
the chariots,
yep.
the people. It was such a big deal that even their families were dressed in white and on chariots following this general. It's in history, and you can read it, that as this parade was happening through Rome and all the accolades of, hey, you just conquered Alexandria or wherever they came back from, they have somebody chirping in the general's ear the whole time, all glory is fleeting. All glory is fleeting. In other words, so what? What's next? Mm-hmm. Let it go. Keep moving, right? And so that's such an integral part of moving forward during change is understanding what it is I need to let go of. How do I let go of it? And then boom, it's going to help. That's just one of the steps, and that's the L.
Well, and I can comment just for a second on that, because that step for me where I didn't have to be a circus monkey on my skateboard anymore. That was the letting go part, where I could just go out and ride any way I wanted to ride that day. I didn't have to.
So it was freeing for you in that sense.
Oh, completely. Yeah. You can see the goosebumps.
But you had to let it go.
It was such a big moment.
So it's funny you say that, because a lot of professional athletes, they still see themselves as a professional athlete, right? And I laugh when somebody says, oh, Kurt played pro basketball. I'm like, yeah, formerly, right? Look at my body now. It's not a pro athlete anymore.
But, you can reach the rim on your tippy toes.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, those days. But last time I played, I snapped my Achilles, as a matter of fact. I was in a charity basketball game, totally ruptured my Achilles. So it's never going to happen again, right?
That is such a horrible injury.
It is, yeah, 9 months. Don't ever do it, yeah. But seriously though, so that letting go is so important, and it's such an integral part. But knowing when and how to do it too. I mean, you had an epiphany of this is what I need to do, and it's freeing. But when you do it though, it really is freeing. It allows you to be able to focus. The next letter is E, and this is where the grit comes in. This is where the work comes in. This is where it's not a one and done. Anytime you go through a change or transition, it's not, okay, I'm done, I'm there. No, not at all. I like using imagery of a water pump, the handle water pump. Sometimes those water pumps, you got to prime them and pump. Sometimes you got to pump and pump and pump. Sometimes it gives water on the first pump. Sometimes you got to pump 50 times, add more water and still pump. And that's that way in transition. Sometimes you pump it once, you're getting water. Other times you got to pump it 50 times and you're still not getting water, where you have to work through the rules and using your network and letting go. And so I always tell people in organizations that going through change and transition, it's not like I do this and I'm there. It might be, or it might be, boy, I got to do this repetitively to get through this process. And that's where the grit and keep going through. A great example of that is a gentleman that I interviewed, that he was an All-American basketball player out of Washington, D.C., considered one of the best high school players in the nation. Went on to become a college All-American at Syracuse University, one of the best college players in the nation. Went on to be a #1 draft pick of the Detroit Pistons. Went on to become considered an NBA Hall of Famer, one of the best players in the NBA. Went on to be top 50 NBA of all time. Went on to build a $500 million business, a year business. Then he became mayor of Detroit. And Dave Bing, over and over and over again, continued to execute through his changes. He could have rested on his laurels at any time.
Right.
I'm a high school, I'm a college All-American, I'm a NBA Hall of Famer, I built a $500 million business. But he continued to execute through his rules. He kept refocusing, using his network, letting go, and moving forward. And that's a great example of how people go through change. I mean, to this day, he's still helping people inner city, right? Mentoring kids, so he's still serving and giving back. I mean, he could easily rest on his laurels, but just a great example of somebody executing through transition and change over and over again. Make
And
sense?
probably enjoying the process. Somebody like that probably really enjoys, and I don't know Dave Bing, but the process for me sometimes is just as exciting as the goal.
Yeah,
For Dave.
Well, and remaining relevant too, that I still have my purpose. I'm still serving people and doing things, whether it be as a mayor, as a business owner, NBA Hall of Famer, whatever it is, right? I'm still serving people. And so, that's what wakes him up every day and gets him excited. I know that for a fact. And so that's great. The last letter, S, stands for someone. What I've discovered is individuals and organizations going through a change have a mentor, so to speak, someone in particular that helped them get to where they want to be. Sometimes it's somebody that's been there, that they said, I've been through this. Yeah, let me help you get through this. Sometimes it's somebody that just has that knowledge to be able to say, well, these are the steps of doing this. As a great example, a good friend of mine, he played in the NBA for quite a few years, and he was enamored by TV. Always loved TV. He's like, man, I just interested in it, just enamored. Well, partway through his professional basketball career in the NBA, he started hanging out in a TV studio right here in Detroit, and had one person, and he's like, hey, can I just hang out with you when I'm not on the road? Can I just come in the studio and watch you? And he's like, yeah, just. And so he started learning from this guy. And as a result, he learned a lot about TV broadcasting, the TV world. And as a result, Greg Kelser has been a TV broadcaster for decades now, because he had a mentor that helped him through that transition and change to get him where he is today. And so RULES, refocus, using network, letting go, executing, and then finding someone to help you get through this. So that's the 5 rules. Again, this could be a 90-minute, 3-hour presentation or sit down. That's it in a crib note version right there.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I mean, I know you guys got a lot out of it. I got a lot out of it. I had to write down Dave Bing because now I want to do more research about him.
Yeah.
Because when I see people like you, like Dave, who, start here, and most, I think, humans on the planet would have been totally content with a professional basketball career. They're like, okay, I'm going to sit on that. But then to refocus, repurpose, and also doors open. They sort of, there's something bigger than us that often guides us.
I agree.
And when we don't fight against that and get out of our own way and quit trying, put our ego on the shelf for a minute and go the way we're supposed to, more doors open.
Yeah,
and you're a great example of that. I love those stories. And
So I have a question for you. Where do you see this going? Where do you want to be with this? What is it that you Where do you see this, the podcast helping people? Where do you want this to be?
Just continue to grow. Continue to grow, inspire people any way I can. If it's, I have a new book coming out, as I mentioned, in a month or actually about a month and a half, it'll be available. Get back on stages, just inspire people through stories, my own personal stories of my friends.
Right.
And I love when that light bulb goes off over somebody's head and they go, I can do that. Yeah. I could do that. I think it all started for me. I was speaking down in Soddy Daisy, Tennessee. And I got a letter about 3 weeks after.
Soddy
Daisy. Soddy
That
Daisy.
sounds like off the beaten path.
Oh, it was up in the mountains. And about 3 weeks after, I got a letter from a principal. And there was a young man in the audience who had said, the principal said, his mom and dad are both in prison. He doesn't show up at school. And I might get choked up. I get really emotional.
Sure.
And he's living with his grandma. And after he saw you speak, he said, I want to be like Garold Vallie. And he never missed a day for a month because I had donated a skateboard. And I said, don't go by grade point average. Go by attendance. They just have to show up. That's it. Whoever shows up for 30 days straight, their name goes in a hat, they can get the skateboard. And that kid, that's all he wanted was that. And some other teachers picked him up a pair of shoes, and it really changed his life.
Cannonballing or snowballing into something bigger and better for him.
And that one person is the reason I was on that stage down in Tennessee. And that's what I love the most. I get a text message at 6 a.m. and from a friend maybe I talked 2 weeks ago saying thank you. Or somebody on stage, somebody read the book.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm sure you've had that feeling.
It goes back to what I said. Titles are great, money's great, but having a positive change for somebody's life is where it's at, in my opinion, which is what you're describing.
Yeah. That's ultimately the goal. However, whatever means I can take to get there. I love having friends in studio sharing their stories because so many people don't know the backstory of whoever it is. Yeah. And that's what you have done with From Glory Days and continue to do.
Absolutely. Great story. I know you asked for one earlier. Here's another one. Charlie Batch. Charlie Batch was out of Pittsburgh and came to Eastern Michigan University to play football. The only reason why he came to Eastern is it was one of the only scholarship offers that he had. He really didn't know where Eastern Michigan University was, but he came from Pittsburgh to Eastern. His junior year at Eastern Michigan University, Charlie Batch got a phone call from his mom back in Pittsburgh, said, you got to come home. And he's like, well, Mom, what's going on? I'm in school. We got workouts and everything. And she's like, no, you need to come home. Finally, he's like, Mom, what's going on? Your 17-year-old sister just got murdered by a gangbang-related shooting, drive-by shooting. So he told his coaches at Eastern his junior year, Charlie said, I don't know if I'm coming back. I got to go help bury my sister, help my mom out. Went home, buried his sister. Mom's like, nope, go back to Eastern, finish your college degree, finish your football. Came back, broke every quarterback record, drafted by the Lions, traded to Pittsburgh, won 2 Super Bowls with Pittsburgh. And this is why we had him on the show. He now has a foundation, inner city Pittsburgh, that he gets kids off the street. He uses sports as an attraction, but they also have education and tutoring and other things to help these kids, not just bring them in for sports. And he says, if I can save one life and honor my sister by doing this, it's well worth it. So those are the stories we want to get out there. I mean, you wouldn't know that about Charlie or what's going on, and that's why we want to get that out there about what he's doing. And those kind of stories, these athletes are having an impact, a positive impact. And so those are the stories we want to get out there.
Yep. And so you ask why I do this. That's one of a big reason why I do this is there are so many wonderful people in this world, and they don't talk about the journey they have endured to get to where they're at. Right. And that's why I love doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, there is no overnight success. There's overnight wealth, right? There can be overnight wealth, but there is no overnight success.
I love it. 20-year overnight success, right? You're 20-year overnight success.
Yeah, something like that, maybe longer.
Well, with that, I think that's a great way to wrap up. And hopefully you guys at home took notes on the rules. You've already Googled Kurt. You've checked out Purpose Point, all that kind of stuff. Because anything that can make you the best version of yourself, I encourage you to take advantage of that. Kurt is one of those people that can help get you there. Kurt, thank you so much for spending some time here with us.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Is there anything that we didn't touch on for the people at home as far as getting in contact with you?
I think the biggest thing is that everybody's been created for a purpose, and finding that purpose is one of the most important aspects of your life, is finding that and knowing exactly why you get up every day and what it is that you're designed to do, right? Because all of us are designed differently. I'm 6'9", you're not, right? You want to see me on a skateboard, but Seriously, though, and so identifying that, and sometimes you need help in doing that and finding that. I mean, we're not born with the identity of, oh, this is what I want to do. No, sometimes you need people in your life in situations to help you become aware. And that's one of the purposes of the Purpose Summit, is to help people become aware, organizations as well as individuals becoming aware of that.
Right on. Well, thank you again for being
Thank you.
here.
My pleasure.
Thank you guys for spending time with us here. And it's just going to continue. It's going to continue. More guests on the drop-in, more encouragement for you to be the best version of yourself you possibly can be. And so with that, I want to thank you again, Kurt.
My pleasure.
This is KurtADavid. I am Garold Vallie, and this has been The Drop-In.